Hello, welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Vin. This is the monthly wrap-up for March of 2025. All right, so I'm way behind on filming this. I'm currently filming this on the last day of April. So I'm finally getting around to my monthly wrap-up for March. And yeah, long time coming. I have only 5 books to talk about. I am not going to be talking about any of these books in depth. All of these books, I have videos called Fresh Read Kills that I talk about the things that I've recently read in much greater detail. This is just going to be a very brief, informal summary. So hopefully this will not be a long video at all. I guess I will discuss these in the relative order in which I read them. So first I'll talk about Stephen Fry's Troy. Stephen Fry is, an author and I guess, public personality who I really like. And he did a trilogy. I think he's got a 4th one actually coming out, about maybe the Odyssey or something. But a trilogy originally of ancient Greek retellings of myth and legend. So there was Mythos, there was Heroes. I read Mythos and I thought that was terrific. Heroes I don't own, but then I also, because I liked Mythos so much, I made sure to read Troy, which I owned. And didn't just read them, I also listened to the audiobook, which is read by him, and they are fantastic. So he does a great job retelling these ancient Greek stories. He does it in his own sort of style, and he has a wonderful gift for alliteration, which I really like. And I would highly recommend not just the books, which are beautifully published, and they have full color images in here as well, but I also highly recommend the audiobooks to enjoy them to the most degree possible. So yeah, I really enjoyed this and would highly recommend it. I had also read this book, which is going to be much harder to find. I don't know how many copies there are of it, but I was really pleased to find this in a used bookstore, a local used bookstore. This is Spirit of the New England Tribes, Indian History and Folklore by William S. Simmons. This was published in the early 1980s, but what it is, it looks at the southern New England tribes and their like legends and folklores. So we're talking especially the tribes of eastern Massachusetts, Rhode Island, eastern Connecticut, and a little bit in western Connecticut where I live. But I have been wanting to find a book for a while now on what sort of local Native Americans, their pre-Christian beliefs and their pre-Christian practices, which it can be hard to find that information because a lot of them had already converted by the mid-1700s to Christianity. But he does a pretty good job here. He basically takes old texts, of course, things that were written by Christians, but trying to piece together what was pre-Christian. And he also takes oral history, and you can kind of see how certain things evolve over time by taking those different types of pieces of evidence. And he categorizes them into different topics. So we have things like shamans and witches, ghosts and the devil, treasures, giants, little people, shrines. So he has all these different categories, and you can see like this is from 1830. We got another one from 1879 over here. So you can kind of see how these different beliefs changed over time. But yeah, I thought this was quite fascinating. It gave me a lot of things to think about, a lot of things to chew on. And I would certainly like to eventually pick up more books like this. But yeah, this was a good read. The last 3 books that I read for MiddleGrade March, a annual booktube event where people read younger middle grade fiction. I didn't read middle grade fiction. I use it as an excuse to read books written for younger audiences that are on my shelf that I haven't read yet. So the first thing that I read for that was this, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. I was certainly intrigued by the photos that are in the book. I wanted to see how they played a part inside the story. And ultimately, I thought this was, for me, an okay book. It took a while to sort of get into the meat of the story, I thought. And when you finally get into it, there were some interesting sorts of things that happen, where the story goes. But it didn't really grab me enough to want to continue on with the series. I did like a certain aspect of this that had to deal with time loops and playing around with with time to almost create like pocket dimensions. I thought that was actually really interesting, but overall, it was an okay read for me. This is something that I'll put inside my kids' bookcase downstairs in our library, so they could always pull it out and check it out if they choose. I then read Neil Gaiman's The Graveyard Book. As I said in my video about this book, I am aware of the controversy surrounding Neil Gaiman. I do not read this, or I did not read this in support of or in solidarity with him. I don't condone any of his actions that he has been, rightfully, it seems, condemned for. But I have a bunch of his books that I've gotten secondhand over the years. I had never read him before, and I'd already planned on reading this, and I didn't just read it. I listened to a full cast audiobook of it that was very, very well done, and I like this a lot. It's dark and macabre enough to really capture my interest as somebody who's like a horror fan. It's written for a younger audience, but not in a way that is condescending or dumbs things down. He definitely, presents some pretty serious things. Each chapter advances this main character's life. So he is somebody who, ever since he's a toddler, is raised in a cemetery by ghosts and a vampire and things like that. And he, with each kind of short story in here, we see him go through his, young and into his teen years. And it's good. It is, I realized partway through the book that it's a take on the Jungle Book and Mowgli's story, just kind of done with a much more macabre sense. But I liked it. I liked enough where I would definitely read Neil Gaiman again. Again, not in support of him, but just to see what all the fuss has been about all these years. And the last thing that I read in March was this, April Morning by Howard Fast. This was originally published in 1961. Again, another book that's been on my shelf for a long time. And it is a historical fiction about the Battle of Lexington. So the shots that set off the American Revolution. And we see it from the eyes of a teenager who is there when the shots are fired, who has, very personal life tragedies that are connected to this event, and the changes that happened to him over around a 24 or so hour period. And I thought this was really well done. I liked it a lot. I don't know if younger readers would necessarily like it as much as I did, but as somebody in my mid-40s, I really appreciated a lot of the dialogue. There's kind of dialogue about, politics and religion, and it showed this sort of more like religious skepticism that people had at the time. And I don't necessarily mean like atheistic, but I mean, people wrestling with religious matters and having debates about them, and, having open disagreements about things. The sorts of things that if you read like from the time period and read the Founding Fathers and stuff like that, those types of conversations they had. So it felt very true to the time period, at least for me, for all of that. And I liked the characterization. I thought that things were, overall told in a pretty realistic way. And I would recommend it. It was a very quick read, but yeah, good young adult historical fiction. So that is it. Those are the books that I read in March. Again, like I said, we're at the end of April, and I'm finally getting around to making this video. So if you've read any of these, this is Troy, Spirit of the New England Tribes, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, and The Graveyard Book, and finally, April Morning. Love to hear your thoughts if you've read them, and as always, thank you, BookTube.